Volume's already on?
Yeah, we're actually gonna have to mute that mic though while you play it.
Okay.
Comfortable. There's two more chairs.
Two for
Oh no, the squirrel will not get.
This is actually exactly what
Only
you
42
do.
though.
Your content,
Forty-one.
your content over here, and then
I got it
bottom right.
immediately. Finally got it.
Which is fine because I really just need the, I
Okay.
need
How long
the
has my finish?
candy,
I don't
and
know
I
if
need the
it's
actual
that
Squirtle.
Yeah.
I've already got like a Wordle, two of them.
I don't think I have any of
How
that.
long does it
Well, there's a slip up somewhere, I need one word.
Have you learned,
What do
have
we
you figured out the
have to-
buddies?
Yeah, if you
No.
mute that, like.
Okay,
take the
so
little
check
thing
this
out,
out,
the
like,
little screech.
My buddy is a Mag cart, and so every
Yeah.
like 1 kilometer that I walk, I go to Mag cart candy.
Do you have to get that double?
So if you want to get here,
So just,
so
like,
click on your bottom little,
the first
reverse icon,
Uh-huh.
and then
It takes place.
buddy.
Don't do it.
But so different Pokemon like have different like costs to get the distance. Like some of the more common ones you can get like 1 every kilometer, others are like up to 5. So yeah, just experiment around, like you're getting like 1 more candy per slip, or maybe your buddy walks around and just get candy that way.
I know Pokemon are very important.
Sam, we are learning things every day.
Yes.
Well,
I'm teaching your life, you just don't know.
Yeah, I got it. I used like almost all of
I
it.
think we're rolling. That's okay. I really want them. So I have a 3-minute clip. I don't know if any of you have seen the John Oliver commentary on sex ed, but you know, I'm constantly talking about, or you know, on my soapbox about sex ed and the importance of it, and not only focusing on abstinence only and talking about comprehensive things, et cetera, et cetera. So in a quick, like I think 3 minutes, he's gonna kind of show you guys the difference between the two, and I find it very amusing. I hope you guys do as well.
It is not practical. And even when they do teach sex ed, schools can teach it with a strong bias. We found a company which offers schools 2 versions of the same video on contraception. Version B is labelled as being non-judgmental. Take a look.
Look, no one ever said being a teenager is easy,
You have to face a lot of important decisions.
but no decision is probably more important than the one you'll make about becoming sexually active.
Some of you may already be sexually active.
But still, a lot of you are not having sex yet. You could be waiting for marriage, the right person, or maybe you're just not ready to take on this very serious responsibility right now.
Cool. Those 30-year-old actors dressed like teenagers from the 90s make some very good points. However, version A, which is non-judgmental, goes in a slightly different direction. See if you can spot it.
Look, no one ever said being a teenager is easy,
You have to face a lot of important decisions.
but no decision is probably more important than the one you'll make about becoming sexually active. As a teenager, you're expected to wait until you're married before you become sexually active.
Until then, abstinence is the only option that's acceptable to your family, your school, and your community.
Well, hold on. Then why did they even keep the first part about it being a decision at all? They should have just said, no decision is more non-existent than the one you don't get to make about sex. Also, remember, God is watching you masturbate and the fluids coming out of your genitals are actually his tears. The very fact 2 videos with the same title but very different messages exist shows just how hard it can be to find out what's going on with sex ed where you live. And this is not even accounting for guest speakers that schools can bring in to augment their programme. Remember the woman from No Screwing Around? That's Pam Stenzel, and her website claims she speaks to 500,000 young people each year, presumably like this.
Here's the line over which you can't step. Absolutely no genital contact of any kind. That's hand to genital, mouth to genital, genital to genital. Oral sex, which is mouth to genital, is sex. And if you have ever stepped over this line, you've risked disease and you need to get tested, and don't you dare! Don't you dare tell anyone you're a virgin!
Why are you trying to yell the horniness out to teenagers?
Okay, so
Just turn your mic on. So you got the green light. Make sure it's green, not orange.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Oh, hey.
A?
I'd say ours didn't sound like that, maybe we, oh, is it a volume thing?
Oh, thanks.
Sam, good at power.
All right, we good now? Okay. So I thought that was just kind of fun to see what I'm talking about. Those views on the absence only aren't that extreme. The lady yelling at the kids, that's a little bit out there. But absence only programs really can only talk about absence as the only option for avoiding HIV, STIs, and unwanted pregnancy. So in terms of the curriculum, we're just saying don't have sex. When I'm
Don't even think about it.
don't even think about it, don't consider it, and if you do, don't you dare tell anybody you're a virgin, because you are not.
Don't you do it.
That V card, you gotta hang on to that. So I just think it's really interesting. I don't think a lot of people, they hear about the controversy and the debate over it on the news, but I don't think a lot of us really see what absence-only education looks like versus comprehensive. And in that first video, when they compared the two different clips, in the comprehensive, they talk about a decision, they talk about how, it's a big decision, it's not pro-sex, it's more, there's options, but you gotta know what your options are and what the possible consequences and risks of those options are. Okay, so now on to my study and paper. The influence of teacher characteristics on attitudes towards sexual health education is what I looked at. So here's a little bit of background info. The most recent 2015, the most recent one, Youth Risk Behavior Survey, commonly known as the YRBS, it indicated that 41% of high school students have ever had sex, 30% engaged in sex within the last 3 months, which classifies them as sexually active, and 43% failed to use a condom during the last time that they had sex. And the YRBS is a nationally representative survey conducted or implemented by the CDC. So it's pretty reliable data. So that's what we're looking at when we talk about sexual risks amongst adolescents in the United States. Duval County is one of the counties or one of the districts that has a YRBS conducted here, but like smaller counties like Clay don't. So sometimes you miss some info on there, but they get a lot of these large districts. So you're really seeing what's going on across the board with students. And regarding the outcomes for youth, about half of all newly acquired STIs that occur every year in the U.S. are amongst youth ages 15 to 24. And basically what these findings indicate that there's a need for policies, programs, and education that addresses these sexual health outcomes for adolescents. Additionally, school-based sexual health education has found to be effective at reducing both risky sexual behaviors and STIs amongst youth. And although I put school-based sexual health education there, I'm specifically referring to the type that's comprehensive, so not that absence stuff only that we were watching, but comprehensive school-based sex ed has found to be effective across the board. I mean, this is widely supported by the data. It's also been shown to delay the onset of sexual intercourse amongst adolescents. So the longer that they wait to have their first experience with sex, the less exposure they could potentially have to STDs. And but for these programs, for this type of education, the teacher effectiveness is key for how they're implemented. So when I talk about teacher effectiveness, I'm getting to things like attitudes with adherence to the curriculum, especially because when a curriculum is evidence-based, it's evidence-based based on how it's supposed to be implemented, not based on adaptations that a teacher might choose to make. So the problem statement. So there's a lack of training for those teachers that are oftentimes responsible for teaching sex ed. Only about 60% of colleges and universities require pre-service teachers seeking certification in health education to take a course on sexuality education. So they usually don't, or have a little bit more than half of them get that education, at least one course, while going for their certification, but a whole bunch of them never take a course on sex ed. And 1/3 of the teachers that are responsible for teaching sex education report never receiving any type of training on the topic. So whether it's in-service trainings, professional development, or having prior experience from college courses, 1/3 of them that teach this stuff have no background knowledge about it. So the research indicates that it's crucial that teachers are adequately trained, so training, we get that that's really, really important. But besides training, little is known regarding what other teacher level factors may influence how good they'll be at teaching sex ed, especially comprehensive sex ed. So we know how important training is for these teachers, but what else affects their ability to implement sex ed? So the purpose statement for my study was to identify whether certain individual level characteristics of health education teachers are related to their attitudes towards specific topic areas of sexual health and their inclusion in school-based sex ed. Basically, I wanted to know whether there's some personal characteristics that teachers have that influence what they think about sex topics being talked about in school-based settings. And so the characteristics that I looked at were race, gender, age, and religiosity. And the sexual health topic areas include reproductive health, contraception, pregnancy, abortion, STIs, HIV/AIDS, and sexual violence, which also includes sexual abuse and sexual harassment. And these topic areas, so when we think about comprehensive sex ed, there's 6 key concepts. One of those key concepts is sexual health. Other ones include relationships, sexual behaviors, so like abstinence or condom use, but one of the key concepts is sexual health, and these are just the subtopics of that key concept. If I looked at all of the concepts, I think I would have been a little bit overwhelmed. So my research question is there a relationship between individual level characteristics of health ed teachers charged with implementing sex ed and the attitudes of these teachers towards comprehensive sex ed? So what does the literature show? Personal beliefs, thoughts, attitudes, and prior experiences of teachers play an important role in their teaching behaviors and practices, but many teachers are uncomfortable with the topic of sexuality and with teaching the subject. Personal values of teachers have been found to influence which topic areas of sex ed they include in the material they cover. So the curriculum they're given might talk about abortion, or the curriculum they're given might talk about proper condom use, but if there's no administrator or somebody making sure that these things are taught, the teacher might skip over them because they're uncomfortable with doing a condom demo, which is understandable, but it's important to realize that you're not going to have fidelity if you're missing key aspects of the curriculum. So another finding was that actually teaching sex ed positively influences teacher beliefs towards the topic. The longer they teach it, the more positive they feel about it. Ultimately, though, perspectives of sex ed teachers is an area that hasn't been well studied. So there was some stuff in the literature, not a ton. Primarily what has been looked at is sexual health outcomes following the implementation of curricula or interventions, programs. So looking at health outcomes for the students that participate. And also the views and perspectives and experiences of parents and students. So teachers historically haven't been included in the research, or to a very limited extent. Individual characteristics in sex ed. So the race, gender, age, and religiosity, these characteristics, the 4 of them, there wasn't a ton of information available. Most of it was information that was gathered through surveys of parents rather than of teachers. So I was kind of limited to what I was looking at. But there were some studies that showed that there were some differences in gender. Overall, females tend to be more supportive of sexual health education than are males, but males tend to think that they're more knowledgeable, which, that might be a self-confidence thing. Let's see, religiosity. The only thing that was found with that was those that attended church frequently, what they would consider frequently, were less likely to support comprehensive sex ed. They wanted the abstinence-only curricula. But across the board, there wasn't a ton of information, so it is lacking, and the findings that are out there are, kind of vary. So there, might be a need for more. So methods and methodology. I used a survey with a Likert scale type questions to collect data on the attitudes towards inclusion of certain topics in school-based sex ed. Scores that participants could get range from a low of 7, where they strongly disagreed, to a high of 35, where they strongly agreed with all 7 topic areas. I mentioned the data that I collected on race, gender, age, and religiosity, and I implemented a multiple linear regression in SPSS. So the mean score for attitudes towards sexual health education was really high. So it was almost 34, and the highest you could get was a 35. So most people were really supportive of these different topics. The individual score that was the lowest was on abortion, and even still, the average score for that across all participants was like a 4.5. I was pretty surprised with this. I expected more variation, but I'm glad that there's support amongst all my participants for these topics. The average age of participants also was about 44 years. So I had participants as young as their late 20s, and I think I had a participant that was 73. The adjusted R-squared for my model was 0.314, which is a moderate explanation, so that's not bad. I'd like it to be higher, but it's not bad. None of the individual characteristics were found to be significant. But when we look at age, that was the one that came closest and had the strongest relationship. So as age increased, the scores on sexual health education attitudes increased as well. And religiosity, that one was also close to being significant, but not quite. And the less religious a person consider themselves to be, the higher their score on sexual health attitudes. So I mentioned how we didn't really have any statistically significant relationships, which is unfortunate. I think I really would just need a larger sample size, because all these scores were really high. Like I said, the lowest average score was like a 4.5, and that was only on abortion. The rest of them were really high. The literature also indicates that there's no consensus on how these factors that I was looking at relate to views of comprehensive sex ed. The largest predictor across the literature has been identified as the amount of training that teachers have received. But when I think about the training that teachers receive and the fact that that benefits how they implement sex ed, I think it would be helpful to know what the training looks like and to see whether or not we can make this training more culturally competent for people of different races, for people with different levels of religious beliefs, because you do still have those extremes of people that are really all about the abstinence only, and maybe there's a way that we can help to conduct trainings and have people realize that comprehensive sex ed, we focus on abstinence only, but it's important to also talk about other aspects that can keep our students healthy. And that is it. Thank you.